battery relocation time. So I've ordered a battery holder. I'll put it in a thumbnail here. And so we're going to use that. It's going to go in this location right here. Of course, when you're doing this, you got to make sure that when the bumper's on here, that the battery is not too far forward here, because of course it's going to be sticking out pretty far. Making sure it's up high enough, make sure it's not interfering with anything. This is the evap canister, the charcoal canister, and it's right here usually. So before, when I had my regular turbo on here, the T25, I had this relocated to where the battery's at, over there, near the battery. And I'm not even sure it works anymore. It's 1997. I doubt it does, but I've never had a code for an evap in this car. And so all I'm going to do is here is I'm going to just basically U-turn. I'm going to have a connector, and we're just going to send it back as if it's not even there. And I suspect it's not going to bother anything. The only other, this thing doesn't have like a vent valve like on most of them today. It doesn't have a leak detection pump. It doesn't have anything like that. It just has a purge solenoid. And so from time to time, that solenoid's going to purge from the tank into the engine. That's the way it's supposed to go anyway. So by basically looping this back, it's going to be still purging vapors from the tank, which, irregardless of passing a state inspection for a check engine light or anything like that, it's not much gonna, I mean, it still needs to do that so that the tank doesn't overpressure. So I'll loop it back around so it can still purge vapors. And then I don't even think it would cause a check engine light to come on, to be honest with you. But and not so much that it's important now, because this is a 97, and anything that old here in Texas just gets a safety inspection. It doesn't, if the check engine light, it won't fail for that. So, but I don't want the check engine light on anyway. So, but again, I don't think this thing's doing anything. So by removing it and just looping this back around, I think it's going to be fine. So I've measured the width of the battery. Now when you're doing batteries like this one here, this battery is a 75 group battery, and it's got 650 cold crank amps and 90 reserve capacity. So with those things in mind, keep in mind we have the return oil pump and the fuel pump. The alternator we have here is a higher output alternator. We got that from PowerMaster. They have one that will fit your car. Everything on the car is LED lights now, so at least the draw where that's, situated is kind of lessened. However, I do have 2 amps, a subwoofer, and things like that. So if anything, I can probably find a battery that is larger cold crank amperage than that, just to give a little bit more reserve, not so much reserve capacity, but, well, more cold crank. But you think about like size of a Honda battery. A Honda battery is much thinner. So on this battery, it's measuring 6 3/4 basically, as far as the width on the top. Now the length's not so much going to matter because it's going down the length of this frame here. But I do know that 6 3/4 inches measured from this part of the frame here, I've got room for days in there. So I can bring that battery almost all the way up here if I wanted to. Maybe even use one of the stock hold bolt positions for this purge. I'm sorry, for the canister. So the cables, I think I'm going to run right through here and then back, obviously, across the front and then back around the original location. And I've got a big crimper, like a big hammer wedge crimper coming to crimp the big battery cables with, some butt connectors, ends. I don't know, like I said, if I'm going to stick with a side mount battery or if I go with a top mount. It depends. All right, so what we got is, this is kind of the location where I'm thinking that hole right there is where I plan to put the cables through and feed them around to the front of the car over to where they're at now, and basically join them together. So I've taken a measure. I think a good 5 or 6 foot ought to do it from here to there. The ground, I'm going to work on that and see what I can do on that, but definitely the positive. But you can see just where it's at right now. It would clear the tire on full turn. I have the floor jack up underneath the wheel and just the wheel lightly mounted, so I can get full turn radius and make sure there's no obstruction right here with the battery tray. And of course the battery, once it's in here, it's not going to be anything other than what the tray is. It's just going to have this upper portion, and all this stuff will be raised up and moved out of the way. But I'm thinking this is a good spot. The only obviously concern, and I'm about to find out by putting the bumper up here, is the fascia. With the tire off, the fascia will come up, and of course it gets in those grooves up here and slides in. Once this is mounted firmly, I should be able to fish it around the side. Like I said, I'm about to find out. But if you look above where the fender here goes, if you look over it, it disappears behind this plane. It just nudges out just a little bit there. So like I said, coming back now towards the wheel, because I got this room and I know I'm going to miss it on full turn lock, then that looks to be about the spot that I'll make it. And of course, wherever there's a bolt hole here, I'm going to drill and then put in a fitting, like a, what's it called? It's not a, basically a fitting where you'll compress it and it crunches in, then it gives you like threads that you can put a bolt in. And basically all the holes that I have exposure to do that on both sides, because obviously the battery's heavy and it's going to matter when I'm hitting bumps and stuff, because it'll always be that shock down, you know. Of course that weight will wear if I don't connect and make connection points everywhere I can on here. The only other option would be welded on here, but then it'll never give me the ability to, you know, to ditch it if I wanted to. So to me it looks like it's going to be either here or just a hair back to clear, like I said, the bumper the fascia as it's down. But I know this fascia comes and it curves out away, so I'm about to find out. I'm trying to put it on here as careful as I can, because this thing's held on precariously with some bungees and some magnets in the back. So I'm gonna mark where it's at now in case this is favorable, because if it is, I'll just leave it right here and I'll get started on the rest of it. All right, so it does look like it is going to clear really well. If you look in here, you can see the battery box is well away from anything really. And even if you envision the battery being in there, there's really nothing to obstruct it. There is this light here, but I know that this harness will go down and get in there very easily. And so I think this location is going to be good. So that's the one we're going to lock. And I did put a little dot over about how far I thought I could move it over if there was some interference up here in the front of that corner, but it's got room for days. So I don't see any issues with mounting it right here. All right, and here what I've done is I had purposed to do, remember I was saying I was going to do as many as I could. I put this one on and this one, and then I kind of grabbed the battery tray and kind of picked my weight up from the ground, and that was enough. That was good enough. But since I don't want to be driving down the road and all of a sudden hear this noise and look back and there's my battery trailing behind me, so I went ahead and did 4 total. I did not do these, and this one here was right on the lip. So behind here is just where this, I guess this material folds for about a good 1/2 inch, and there's nothing really behind here, so there's nothing to get behind there. So just these 2 here, and then these 2 here. I ground off some of this. I ground off this little lip here so I could get more of a flush sit with the battery box. And I'm gonna paint all this, obviously. And of course, another good benefit of putting the battery here is it's right in front of the wheel, and it'll help put more weight on this side of the axle, which will help keep weight transfer down on launches and things like that. Not a whole lot, but if you're going to put a battery in your trunk and you got a front wheel drive car, then you're just making it worse for yourself. So with it being up here, it is going to help with the power transfer, the weight transfer. Okay, and so here it is mounted up. The 4 bolts in. I got to get 2 more washers, one for the bottom on each side here. But this thing is sturdy as hell, so it ain't going nowhere. Of course, the cables, like I said, go back up and through here. I'm debating using the side mount. It's going to be kind of hard over here. It's okay. I could make the side mount cable head go this way. Here it's going to be kind of weird, so I may just swap over to a top post, and I'm thinking of doing that, and that way both can divert. One can divert right back in here on this side, the other can point and shoot this way, and so I'd have to use a different type battery. But yeah, I mean, here it is, set, good to go, everything fits. Okay, so painted, all in, all good. Now we'll run the cables and stuff like that, and I'll update you on that. That second toe strap is mounted in the front. This should be coming out through one of the front openings here, and so you know that the intercooler's right here, so this should just be hanging out just pretty much by about this much out of it, if not just a little bit less, coming out of the front fascia. So yeah, it's nice and sturdy. It's not interfering with anything, so when it gets pulled up on the flatbed or whatnot, and like I said, the main reason for doing this isn't so much to look like the imports out there, but the car is low. It's going to need a flatbed every time. Depending on what happened, it could be even lower, like scraped to the ground from flats or whatever the case may be. So rather than crawling up underneath there and hooking up on the sway bar or something else, or having it's just easier if it's right there sticking out the mouth. And a lot of those, I guess the red ones and the blue ones that have the loop, those things are just cast POC type metal, and a bunch of pictures show where they're holding it in their hand and it broke apart the first time they tried to tow it. It's all decorative for that kind of stuff. I thought about at some point getting like just a factory loop, a factory type loop, cutting a hole in the front fascia, going through here and like drilling holes and tapping here. But with this being aluminum and it not being all that thick, I didn't want to, you know, kind of same scenario, hook up to it and yank it right out of there as he's trying to tow it up the flatbed. So this was my best option. I got it mounted. There was a hole right there, right here. It was just a hole already in the subframe, and so there's an opening on this side that allows you to get back inside there and get down in there and put the other side of the bolt on there. And there's nothing in the front here, so if it's going to sit here and work this way or work that way, it's not going to hurt anything. The dryer's protected, the intercooler here is protected because it'll be pulling it up mostly this way, but it's nice and sturdy. Yeah, and I can shorten or lengthen this because it has a buckle right there that I can shorten or lengthen it from to extend it further in or out. So that part of it's good. So one more thing down. So for jump starting, I was going to put that jump starting bracket with those lugs here. It's kind of just in your face. It didn't look right to me. I thought it made sense because that's where the battery was, and it probably did. But I wanted it more kind of hidden, I guess you can say. And so I came over here and I just mounted it down inside of here with one of those. I didn't even put a bolt on that side because it's not really going anywhere. I'm sandwiched up against the frame up on this side here. And then I put one of those little, like I did with a battery holder over here, like just a nut fitting inside there. And so when I go to jump start it, obviously I have to pop these caps off. And there's my terminals. And so yeah, that's pretty much it. One thing I'll watch out for is this cap here. This little tab wants to stick out close here. It shouldn't hit anything, but you never know, so I want to kind of twist it around to where it kind of binds up like that. But yeah, there you go. In full transparency, our first install issue, the short answer is, will you have to take off the bumper to change the battery? Yes, you will. It comes down to this right here. As I'm trying to lift the battery up and sit it down. Now, it wouldn't be an issue if this wasn't here, but I want that securement. Even though there's going to be a deal coming up over here to hold the battery in, I still want this shelf here to protect me during, you know, hard left turns and keep the battery from moving and sliding and all that stuff. Because the easier fix would be to cut here, and then cut all along here, like I said, just to get this shelf off and away. But what happens is when you try to set the battery up on here, I just try to test fit it, you have to go in at an angle to slide it up over, to get it up over this lip. And when you do, you lift it up high enough to hit this frame portion right here. So what's the fix? Well, I've already marked the holes. I'm gonna drop it down, it looks like 1.5 inches maybe, and use those 2 spots there rather than do any cutting. I even thought about hammering this, but man, this is no. So it's much easier to do that and do it right and leave this intact. And what I'll end up doing, it looks like I can even, I thought I was going to have to mount the battery with the side post facing in, but I can actually, there's enough cable here to face them out. So that'll be a little bit easier. I won't have to worry about contact like I was talking about earlier back here. There's one bolt here that I'm leaving here. I thought I might use this as some kind of ground, but I don't think I'll be needing it, so I'll be removing this out. But yeah, just when you're, what I would recommend doing, unlike I did, is once you get to the part where you're going to actually put this up here, go ahead and put your battery in the tray and lift it up with, like, say, a tall floor jack and support it, and see how much room you have before you hit here. And then also keep in mind when you go to change it, let's say that you get the battery in there and it's just right there. Well, that's still too close because you're going to have to lift up to clear this ledge to get the battery out at some point. So, yeah. So a little bit more work, but as the saying goes, it's never time to do it right, but there will always be time to do it over. So we'll do it right. All right, so with the bumper test fit inside here, you can see we got tons of room. It's nowhere near contacting anywhere. Air is going to be coming in through that little airport right there to help cool it and blah, blah, blah. So just the good news is once the bumper's just test fitted on here like that, look at all the room we have to put the terminals on this side. I am going to end up mounting it like this because on that side of the battery, it is just too close to the frame. It's just going to be way too close for me to trust these terminals not touching that frame. Some of the webbing on this thing, like right here in this spot, the way that this thing kind of ramps up, that webbing has to be cut off. Otherwise, the battery, you can see a little bit of gap in between the battery and the floor of the battery holder. And that's why it's riding up right where it contacts back there on that little webbing, that molded webbing. You can cut that off. It don't matter. It's just webbing. It has nothing to do with the battery. So once that's removed, it'll set flat. We'll put the little bracket on it that goes up to the corner, and we're good. Fits good. So y'all ain't gonna believe this. I don't know if it's because the battery swapped around or what, but I almost hooked up the positive to the negative, not once, but twice. And so as you can see, I went through great lengths to remind myself because I'm tired. I had a lot going on last night, went and worked out this morning. Probably not the best thing to be messing with wiring when you're tired, but I want to get this done so I can move on to the next thing, which is more likely going to be dropping this engine and painting the engine bay. So, but I wanted to get all this handled and set up, make sure the fitment was there, because if not, plan B, battery was going to go in the trunk. I didn't really want that to happen because that's a long trip to the back to do it. And then sometimes when you put it in the trunk, just like some Mercedes and BMWs and other cars, if somehow that acid can seep into the body of the car, it needs to be vented. Well, if that's the case, well, this wouldn't have worked anyway back there because, you know, I would have found a different way, maybe a box or something like that to put it in. But it should be vented to the outside. And they do have batteries that come with little vents on them that you route with hoses out to the outside of the car. So I'm glad this worked. But anyway, so this is what it looks like. Of course, this is the jumper mod, that little block up there. And I'm waiting on bolts to come in. This is a long battery bolt. They even have a spacer on it because a short one won't work with these ends here. And so I got some bolts coming. for them. And so once I get here, these will come out. And of course, I'll be able to finish it up, hooking it up, and I can start it up, make sure everything's okay. But that's pretty much it, man. That's what it looks like mounted there. I already put the bumper on, as you saw, test fit it, no contact whatsoever. I thought maybe these would have an issue, but nope, no contact. So, but like I said, and I didn't realize this, but yes, the bumper will have to come off. At least this side will have to have these the little shoulder bolts removed or loosened and pry back it a little bit, so I got some wiggle room with the battery in case I have to replace it. But I'm going to keep this on a trickle charge the whole time, so at least maybe the battery replacements will be cut down significantly for that reason. But aside of that, man, it fit. Man, I'm thankful. And on this side, I only did one retaining bolt, and on this side I did two. And man, it's solid as a rock on here. I ain't worried about it. But outside of that, man, it's been a moment. Spent probably, I want to say, $200 thereabouts to do it. And the rationale, money versus benefit, I've already listed the benefits. Frees up the engine bay, puts weight here over the axle, in the front of the axle to help with weight transfer when you accelerate. And just cleaner overall engine bay. It's one of those things where a lot of people relocate their batteries. This is just, in my mind, probably a better way. It's a shorter trip to go than in the back. Not as easily serviced as a trunk mounted one, but yeah, this is the way I went. All right, just waiting on bolts. Positive and negatives done. Got the charger on it here. The charger's on it, obviously, like this, because the cables aren't on yet. So yeah, like I was saying, front bumper removal, at least on this side, or move away to get it out. But it's the same thing on the Viper. And the battery's behind the left rear tire. You gotta take the tire off, take the fender liner off to get it out. Charging it and jumping it, obviously, you can do it from under the hood. And I've got the trickle charger on that one too. So it's just, it's one of those things.